From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Hickson.
And I'm Eric Rosen.
Well, under the circumstances of what happened over the weekend, we are happy that you could join us, and we are taking phone calls. It's 718-727-0143, and we're also taking all of your contact info through Instagram and Snapchat, and we are still doing reruns of past shows on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So I guess everyone knows the story by now. So we are now here to pay tribute to a man who truly was the greatest of all time, the original GOAT, if you will, of his craft, Muhammad Ali.
Yes, Muhammad Ali, born January 17th, 1942 in Louisville, Kentucky, his native state, where at the age of 12, a boy decided to steal his bike, and he was just 89 pounds, and decided, as he told the police officer, I wanted to whoop that boy for taking my bike.
And that stoked a fire in him that wound up leading all the way to the Olympics in Rome, where he won a gold medal.
61 career fights, 56 of which he won, 37 of which were via knockout, 3 heavyweight championships, 2 Olympic gold medals, 14 countries he's fought in, and 2 names he's had throughout his career. The first, of course, being Cassius Clay, up until the Sonny Liston fight.
Yep. Up until the Sonny Liston fight, which, by the way, took place in Miami Beach back in 1963, I think it was.
And did you know who came to visit Muhammad Ali when he was practicing in Miami Beach?
And who would that be?
The greatest band of all time, the Beatles.
Oh, that's right. And he wound up posing with them in a very famous photo. And the Beatles were one of many celebrities that he wound up encountering in his long and illustrious career. Even after his boxing days, he met with presidents, he met with so many other dignitaries. In fact, there was a joke that he made one time to the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, when he and Ferdinand Marcos had met many years ago. He told Ferdinand Marcos, I've seen your wife. You're not as stupid as you look. Obviously making mention to the fact that Ferdinand Marcos married a beautiful woman in Imelda Marcos, who, by the way, is probably best known for having the biggest shoe collection known to man. But aside from his time in the ring, he was probably one of the more controversial figures in and out of boxing. There was his conversion to Islam. There was him refusing to join the army when he got drafted for the Vietnam War. In fact,
1960.
In the late 60s, this was what got him stripped of the title the first time, was because he refused to join the army for the Vietnam War. He basically said that his people were being treated so badly by the U.S. government for so many years. So why would he want to consider fighting for a country that had treated his people so badly? And of course, there was the famous quote that he made: "I ain't got a problem with no Viet Cong."
Yep, he was really a man of peace.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. That's the one thing that people don't get about Islam. When it comes to Islam, the men believe in brotherhood. They treat their fellow man as if they were their own brother. And I've known and met some people that have converted to Islam in the past. The one thing about Islam is these people believe in peace, contrary to some of the radicals who have their own interpretation of Islam and the Quran, if you will.
You know, the Supreme Court even intervened on Ali's behalf in 1971 and overturned his conviction.
That's right.
8 votes to 0, a landslide.
Yeah.
That's how remarkable of a figure he was, that the Supreme Court would be on his side.
And of course, that same year was when he made his comeback to the ring, and he had the first fight with Joe Frazier at the Garden. And the fight was so built up that there were countless members of the media and countless celebrities that wound up showing up that night. And that was the night that Ali really showed exactly how big in stature he is in the sport. He lost in 15 rounds to Frazier, but it wound up being the first of 3 matchups that they had against each other. The other of which was the infamous Thriller in Manila.
Yeah, the third and final fight in their encounter. And, it's crazy. The two of them in the ring, they were the worst. They were each other's worst enemy. But outside the ring, they were each other's best friends.
Yep. And, of course, there was also the famous Rumble in the Jungle that he had with George Foreman.
That was in Zaire, I believe, that fight.
It was, of course, Zaire is now the Republic of Congo.
And that was really a memorable fight in itself right there. He did win by knockout in that fight over George Foreman. And he took him to task. But Foreman was, he didn't exactly...
Foreman was a really good champion. I mean, he was a very, very powerful puncher and so well built. And like Ali, he was a gold medalist in the Olympics, but in 1968.
Yeah, which is, amazing in itself. These two champions right there fought each other with such ferocity. And all the opponents he's faced in his career, you think about it.
Frazier.
Liston.
3 times. Sonny Liston. In fact, the one joke that he made on the Arsenio Hall show over a quarter century ago was that the 3 toughest opponents he ever faced were Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, and his first wife. just to show you how charismatic the guy was. But it was Liston, Frazier, George Foreman, Ken Norton Sr., who he fought at Yankee Stadium 40 years ago.
Ernie Terrell.
Ernie Terrell also. And I think the Ken Norton fight was probably the first real sign that we saw that Ali was really starting to slow down as a professional fighter. But he did something that no heavyweight had ever done in many, many years, and that's be the heavyweight champion 3 times in his career. In fact, he and Leon Spinks were the subject of a famous 30 for 30 documentary about the 1980 championship fight that they had against each other.
But you know what was crazy about Ali? He was a world fighter. He wasn't just a fighter that would fought in the U.S. He fought in 14 countries across. He fought in Kuala Lumpur, against Joe Bugner. He fought Jean-Pierre Koopman in Puerto Rico. He's fought all over the world.
Yep.
Look at this: the Bahamas, Canada, England, Germany, Indonesia, Ireland, Japan, the Philippines, Switzerland, Switzerland even.
Yep. You may not know this, but Joe Frazier actually dabbled a little bit in professional wrestling. In fact, not only did he receive an airplane spin from Gorilla Monsoon at the Garden in the late 70s, he also fought Antonio Inoki, the famous Japanese wrestler, in the late 70s in Japan.
Who was recently, I believe, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame.
That's right.
So revered in Japan to this day. And
as a matter of fact, that match that Ali had with Antonio Inoki was considered one of the 50 matches that changed wrestling forever, because it was the first match to involve one wrestler taking on someone who was not a professional wrestler. He was an athlete of another kind.
But WWE also owes a debt of gratitude to Ali for another reason. He was the first outside referee at WrestleMania 1.
At the first WrestleMania at the Garden.
Yeah, 1985, the year I was born, folks.
Think about it. He took on Gorilla Monsoon. He took on Antonio Inoki. He refereed the famous 6-man tag team match between Hogan, Mr. T, Superfly Snuka, and Cowboy Bob Orton, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
And you know what? Of course, the late Roddy Piper, because he passed away too recently.
And the now incarcerated Superfly Snuka, unfortunately, I have to say.
I know, because of some other things, but that's for a whole other time and place. But I'll tell you, Ali, really, the WWE owes a debt of gratitude from because
Oh, yes.
Vince McMahon put his life on the line with this event.
Mm-hmm.
If it busted, if it didn't do well, that was it for WWE.
But Mr. McMahon did a really smart thing because not only did he have all of these celebrities involved, he made the conscientious decision to bring the first WrestleMania to the Garden. What better place to have an extravaganza like this than New York City and Madison Square Garden, where
world's-
there has been so many legendary moments, not just in WWE, but in professional sports in general and
And boxing.
entertainment in general to happen in that building.
Yeah, but boxing has always been, a great venue for MSG.
Oh, yeah.
And, like you mentioned, the Ali Frazier fights right there.
The first Ali Frazier fight took place at the Garden. There have been so many other fights that have taken place in the Garden. The old Yankee Stadium, of course, has had countless fights. Joe Louis fought there twice.
The Brown Bomber.
Yep. The Detroit Bomber. Joe Louis fought Max Schmeling twice in the old Yankee Stadium. And, of course, after his retirement, Ali wound up being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he wound up being the first real fighter and also the person that raised awareness for Parkinson's even years after his retirement.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Ali. Yeah. I know. And it was in 1981 when he retired from boxing because of the ailments, all the punishment he took to his body, and then finding out years later that he had Parkinson's disease, has fought decades through this terrible disease that unfortunately took his life, along with the respiratory issues that he had to deal with in the days leading up to Friday, where he was in the hospital. And fortunately, the world lost somebody at the age of 74 that was a remarkable human being that won a congressional medal from President Clinton. On top of which he was a cultural icon.
Yep.
This was a guy who was, fast on his feet, fast on his foot, and had a fast mouth too.
Oh, boy.
He basically
He was probably
the best promo
one
cutter.
of the first media darlings in professional boxing. There was not a quote that every reporter would not have put down in their papers.
I'm a bad man. I'm the greatest. I'm gonna teach Frazier a lesson. I float like a bee. No, I sting like a bee. Float like a butterfly.
Sting like a bee. You can't hit what you can't see. In fact, my main man
Muhammad
Kenny
Ali.
Graham, who's on the other side of the glass, he just text messaged me a famous comic book cover: Superman versus Muhammad Ali.
Who would win that fight? I know people.
Can you imagine
Son of Krypton versus.
the son of Krypton versus the son of Louisville?
That would be such an epic battle.
That is how big Ali was as not just a boxing figure, but a pop culture figure. And think about this. He carried the torch for the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta.
That was probably one of the most death-defying moments in all of sports right there. That was really the moment that the world, I think that was one of the most unifying moments in sports history, to see this guy who was a cultural icon, not just in this country, but around the world, carrying the torch in Atlanta, just a few states away from his home state of Louisville, carrying the surprise torchbearer to ignite to open the 96 games in Atlanta. That was the 100th years after the first Olympics.
That's right. Carried the torch at the 96 Olympics in Atlanta.
The centennial.
Was a pitchman. Was dabbled in acting a little bit. In fact, I remember him taking a little small part in the Roots franchise from back in the 70s.
He basically was a great human being above all. He raised social awareness issues for people of color and people. And
Fought for
African-
equality among all the races back in the day. And even did that even until his passing.
And despite the fact, yes, he was a draft dodger, but he had his reasons.
Let me tell you, he was not the only one who dodged the draft into the war in Vietnam. There were countless people.
I think even President Clinton was a draft dodger too.
Supposedly, he was a draft dodger as well, but Ali was made an example, I think, because of who he was, and possibly because of what he was as well.
But at the end of the day, he was a man of peace. He was a man of warmth. And yes, granted, those things conflict with the guy that was in the ring, but he was ultimately probably the greatest athlete, the greatest human being that the world unfortunately lost. And now we're just going to celebrate his life. We're just going to celebrate what he did for this world, what he did for this country, what he did for everybody.
Was a father to 9 children, including his daughter Layla Ali, who went on to become a very successful boxer in her own right before she retired. And of course, there was also a very famous charity boxing match that he had with the late football player Lyle Alzado back in the late 70s. In fact, they wound up promoting this thing so much that they had the match at the old Mile High Stadium in Denver many years ago. This was 1979. The summer of 1979 was when they had that match. And it was a pretty well-contested match, too. Let me tell you, if you were to think about the athletes who have changed not just sports, but this country in the 20th century and the 21st century, you think of Ali, Babe Ruth,
Michael Jordan,
Jackie Robinson.
I think even Wayne Gretzky
Also, for basically bringing hockey to the mainstream, especially in Los Angeles, where it was dead for many years. Pelé, who made soccer a pastime back in the 70s.
Yeah.
There were so many different athletes that wound up changing not just sports, but maybe changed this country in so many different ways. Ali was one of those guys because he personified charisma. He personified what it was like to be a human being, what it was like to be a man of peace, what it was like to be a giving man. And that was another thing. He was very, very, very tireless in all of his charitable efforts in the community.
Well, he was a great man, and believe me, this world lost a hell of a human being.
I don't think that there's going to ever be another boxer, not just athlete, not just boxer. I don't think there's ever going to be another athlete of his caliber that may be making his way in here in this lifetime. And if there is, then I haven't met him yet, because I don't see anyone that made such an impact the way Ali did.
Well,
and the cold reality of this whole thing is life has to go on. For the record, his funeral is going to be this coming Friday in his hometown of Louisville, and I just heard former President Clinton and even Billy Crystal are going to speak at his funeral. At his funeral.
Believe me, there's going to be plenty of people coming out from the world of boxing,
and it's going to be open to the public.
Oh, you know, that funeral is probably going to be one of the most televised event this coming Friday. And believe me, if I can, I will try and find a way to watch it, because if I can't, I'll see whatever the news recaps. Now, we were off for the last 2 weeks, as you know, for the holiday season. So I want to give you the skinny on some sports, including auto racing. You know, during the annual tradition of Memorial Day, you have the Indy 500 from the legendary Brickyard in Indianapolis. You know, it's the one place where the finishing line is made of bricks, because that's what the entire stadium used to be. They made it from bricks, but they took it away except the finishing line, which is the most iconic spot in all of auto racing. Whether you have NASCAR or IndyCar racing events at the Brickyard, that is probably one of the best venues to be at. But the best part about the Indy 500 is they have the hometown parade the day before with all the racers. Then they have the whole ceremony taking place on Sunday, saluting soldiers and saluting the people. And, you know, and, of course, a great rendition they had of God Bless America. And then finally the race took place. And once the race finishes, the winner and the team kiss the Brickyard.
Yep.
And the winner gets a wreath around him and a glass of milk. And he gets to decide whether he wants whole or 2%.
I wonder if there have been any racers who've actually chosen the 2% before, because knowing how some of these guys are, they'll probably want the whole milk.
Oh, he got the whole milk, and it's really amazing to see them just guzzle that milk like they've never drank anything in their lives.
Yeah, and not even caring that the stuff just stains their suit.
They call it the greatest spectacle in racing. And this was the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500. And a rookie by the name of Alexander Rossi, who was smart in conserving his fuel for the last few laps of the race, and at the very end when he crossed the finish line, ran out of gas and had to be towed back to the garage.
Wow.
But the fact of the matter is, he is the 9th rookie in the history of the Indy 500 to win the trophy, the first since Helio Castroneves back in 2001. If that name's familiar to any cultural fans, pop culture fans, he was on Dancing with the Stars a few years back.
Right, right.
But also tried to make a stint in NASCAR, failed miserably as a NASCAR driver, went back to the Indy circuit, and will never leave Indy. But you got to give it up to this guy, Alexander Rossi, an American, though nonetheless, who won. That very day, on Sunday, they had breakfast in Monaco for the Grand Prix, or Formula 1, which is even faster than IndyCar.
Yeah.
They do it on the streets. They had to close off streets wherever they go, and they can go up to 200-300 miles per hour, these cars. It's no joke. And Lewis Hamilton, of course, a huge victory defeating Daniel Ricciardo at the Monte Carlo Grand Prix, and that's huge. Monte Carlo, that's a great party town right there.
Yeah. It's also one of the richest towns in the entire country.
Oh.
In the entire world, I should say.
Yeah, Monte Carlo, it's beautiful, man, on the French Riviera. And then Martin Truex, later that night, from Charlotte, led 588 of the 600 laps to win the Coca-Cola 600. And inspiring him was his girlfriend, who just beat cancer.
Amazing.
To win that race,
Praise God to her for her beating this dreaded disease, first of all.
and being such an inspiration to his to her boyfriend Martin Truex, who really that's who he credits his fight and his drive to be a better racer, is her. So congratulations to him and whoever won the race from the Poconos. Now let's get into some PGA Tour action. The Dean and DeLuca Invitational from Texas, finally at Colonial in Texas. Jordan Spieth won his first PGA Tour in his home state.
That obviously has got to be a big deal for him, especially considering that a lot of the fans from nearby were checking him out, and fortunately for him, he was able to win the title.
Yeah, he had 10 birdies. Yeah, he had 6 birdies on the back 9, including on the last 3 holes. And then the most insane, on the par 3 17th, where he banked a shot on the second one to make birdie.
I wonder if this was probably the best that he's played in any tournament.
It was definitely one of his, this was something that he just needed to get off his back. That monkey that was just annoying him, that he never won in his home state. And now another person who won his first in over 165 starts in the PGA Tour, William McGirt, on the second playoff hole on the 18th, wins the Memorial Tournament, which is an annual tournament held in Memphis, Tennessee, hosted by the Bear, Jack Nicklaus, the 18-time major winner, who's also been great at building golf courses, too.
Yeah.
Hundreds to his name. So congratulations to him. This past Saturday from Englewood, California at the Forum. I can't believe the Forum is back up and running these last few years.
Yeah. In fact, the Forum actually served as a place of worship for a time.
Really?
Yeah, it did.
I did not know that. The old Compaq Center in Houston, Texas, is now where Joel Osteen uses his.
That's right.
Does his Sunday services.
He does his Sunday services there, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he also does services in other parts of the country as well. He's a well-renowned man of worship.
And this past Saturday at UFC 199, that's right, folks. They're just one away from the Epic 200, July 9th.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't Brock Lesnar going to be making his return into the octagon?
He's going to be the first person ever to be signed by both UFC and WWE at the same time. The fact that he was able to negotiate that deal with Dana White and Vince McMahon to allow him to be in this heavyweight fight July 9th against Mark Hunt. That's his opponent. This will be his first fight since he lost to Cain Velasquez in his
Yep.
So this is going to be something to see right here. And there's 3 title fights already scheduled for UFC 200. But getting back to UFC 199, the middleweight title was on the line. Luke Rockhold, who just came off a victory over Chris Weidman back in December, first title defense, loses to Michael Bisping by knockout in the first round to become the new champion. And then in the bantamweight title match, the Dominator, aka Dominic Cruz, who for 2 years had to deal with lingering ACL issues, knee issues, finally came back after a few fights and won the bantamweight championship, defended successfully against Uriah the California Dream Faber by unanimous decision, 50-45, 50-45, 49-46, in the 5th round, all 5 minutes, to retain his championship. Max Holloway in the featherweight match defeated Ricardo Lamas by unanimous decision. Dan Henderson, who's been around for a long time in the middleweight scene, defeated Hector Lombard by head kick and elbows in the 2nd round. In the lightweight version, Dustin Poirier defeated Bobby Green by punches, TKO, in the 1st round. So UFC 200, we got the women's championship, bantamweight title that's going to be on the line. The big one, though.
Yeah.
John Bones Jones, Daniel Cormier, unifying the light heavyweight championship. It's going to be at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. I cannot wait.
There you go.
July 9th, folks. Order it. Order it. If you don't, I'm coming to your house and ordering it for you.
Well, let's hope that people, that if they order this pay-per-view, that it doesn't last less than 90 seconds.
You know, really, that's the thing. I want to see these fights go the whole distance. The championship, they have 3 championship fights in this one night. They're supposed to be 5 rounds, these matches.
Of course, these guys are not going to cooperate. They want to kill each other and just end it all within the first few seconds.
Or they want to go like Ronda Rousey before her loss, you know, where she took care of people in under a minute. Sounds like a pizza place, right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's get to Roland Garros, the 2nd Grand Slam of the tennis season. And in the women's finals, unfortunately for Serena Williams, she will not tie that elusive record of Steffi Graf's of 22. She lost yet again her 3rd straight Grand Slam tournament, 2nd straight in the finals.
Yeah.
This time to the 22-year-old Garbine Muguruza of Spain.
Yeah. It seems like Serena's hit a little bit of a rough patch recently, but there's still the issue of the next tournament that's coming up. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be Wimbledon.
The grass court season, that's right. Now that the clay court season is over with the end of the French Open, now we move on in less than 3 weeks to the grass courts of the Old England Lawn Tennis Croquet Club. By the way, in this particular match, in the 1st round, when it was 6-5, Muguruza fought off 2 break points and had with a pair of outside serves, and Williams saved 2 set points, but Muguruza was able to convert with an astonishing backhand. And it's amazing how many points Muguruza was able to win this match. She won 75 in the 1st round and won 6-4 in the 2nd. And for her, for Serena, you know, she's still at her advanced age of 34.
Yeah.
She's trying to get that elusive 22nd Open championship in the Open era. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Each time that she loses, you know, it's really going to make it even more frustrating.
Right.
Her confidence could be going down right now a little bit because of this.
Could it be that maybe that confidence has something to do with her advanced age? I mean, she is approaching her 35th birthday.
And she's, you know, for the most part, she's won most of her sets before for the final match. You know, she only lost 1 set heading into the finals. And on top of that, the fact that she lost to Angelique Kerber at the Australian Open, she lost now to Garbine Muguruza at Roland Garros. She's really got to win some more grass court tournaments and really get her groove back before Wimbledon. I think she will.
Yeah.
That was the last tournament she won, was at Wimbledon. I think she'll do it again, tie the record. Steffi will be there to congratulate her, and then she'll be there to watch her in Flushing Meadows break that record.
Yeah.
And then I think that's where she retires. I think she'll retire after this year.
You think so?
That's my prediction.
Oh.
She wins the next 2 Grand Slam tournaments, retires in style.
Even if she doesn't, she's long established herself as probably the most dominant female American tennis player of our generation. And there have been quite a few. We've had Chris Everett. We've had Billie Jean King. Lately, we had Monica Seles. Although she was born in the former Yugoslavia, she spent the majority of her life here in the States.
The original screamer, if you will. Because believe me, nobody screams loud. In fact, Martina Navratilova was sometimes annoyed going up against Monica Seles.
So true.
And then Lindsay Davenport, another legendary American.
Lindsay Davenport was another good American player.
So there have been some great American women's tennis players. The American men, though, we haven't had a great player, honestly, since Agassi and Sampras. Yes, there's Andy Roddick, but
Andy Roddick was a disappointment to me. I mean, he had the potential to maybe be a Grand Slam player in his own right, but he could win what? I think it was one major title in his entire career.
It's just he didn't really match up to what we expected him to be. And the two players really the American men's have Jack Sock and John Isner. That's it really. But otherwise, these are guys that can maybe get to the round of 16, quarterfinals at best. They're not they're not players that are going to get you the championship. But onto the men's side, Roland Garros. Finally, the joke is not. Yeah, there is no joke.
Yeah.
Novak Djokovic finally wins on the clay courts of Roland Garros, defeating Andy Murray in 4 sets.
And now his Grand Slam chase is complete because he has officially won at least one of each of the 4 Grand Slam tournaments for his career.
And not only that, he's the first person since the legendary Australian Rod Laver to hold all 4 titles at once.
Yep.
That's really an accomplishment right there, to say the least. On top of which, too, he has 12 career Grand Slams already. He's 2 back of Rafael Nadal for the second most, and just 5 back of Federer for the most all-time on the men's circuit. And I know, believe me, my mom, she's not the biggest Djokovic fan. I know she loves Federer, and I don't blame her. I love I like Federer too. But honestly, Federer is getting up there in age.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be disrespectful to him, even though that sounded a little disrespectful. But with the back injury he just suffered and that he sustained recently, and the fact that he had to withdraw from the French Open, who knows if he will be ready in time to compete on the grass court of Wimbledon. Hopefully, maybe this time off will help him towards that. As for Nadal, he suffered a wrist injury, had to withdraw from the round of 16 match against Dominic Thiem. I don't know if he'll even be ready for Wimbledon as well. He's getting up there. He just approached 30, actually.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, honestly, Djokovic right now is the best player in the game. He's got a nasty serve. His forehand is something to be marveled at.
True.
I'm happy he won 3-6, 6-1, 6-2, 6-4, but Andy Murray, though, really gave it his all in this tournament as well. Who would have thought he would have been in the finals?
Yeah.
He's the second best player ranked in the world behind Djokovic. These two will be competing against each other, mark my words, at Wimbledon.
Yep.
Murray did win. Now, for the final race coming up.
The Belmont Stakes, just a matter of time before it makes its way over here. We're looking at the field right now for the stakes.
We got Brody's Cause, of course, Dale Romans, who's won several races as a trainer. Alba Family Stables owner, Luis Saez, a New York, a good jockey right here. Cherry Wine, of course, who came in second, was the 16-1 odds favorite at the Preakness, who came in second ahead of Nyquist. Dale Romans, another Dale Romans horse right there. William Pacello, Frank Jones, Frank Shoup, the owners, and Corey J. Lonery as the jockey. And then Creator, who was actually in the Derby. Steve Asmussen, who just recently got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Windstar Farm, one of the legendary owner stables. Irad Ortiz Jr. Destin. I like that name.
Yeah.
Todd Fletcher, a legendary trainer in his own right, won several times at Belmont. And Javier Castellano as the jockey. Exaggerator. That's the horse that everybody will be looking at. The DeSormo brothers. Keith, of course, the trainer. Kent, the rider. This is a great story, really, because the two of them have been at odds in the past, especially Keith being at odds with Kent's alcohol issues, Ken having to go through rehab. But the fact is, the two of them are still together. They may not show that love, like most brothers, but there is a love for each other.
Yeah.
And there's a respect for each other. And believe me, Keith wouldn't allow Ken to ride that horse if he didn't feel Kent was up to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much faith he has in his brother.
Yep.
And Governor Malibu, what a name right there.
Yeah, Governor Malibu.
I never. And then Lonnie. This horse is one of the most eccentric horses. In fact, Lonnie doesn't like to be with the other horses when they do that annual Riders Up. Mm-hmm. Lonnie likes to be by himself.
Yeah.
The reason why he got into the Kentucky Derby, he won the UAE Derby, which won the pre-curse races. A Japanese horse.
Interesting.
Yeah, Mikio Matsunaga, a legendary trainer in his own right, and Yutaka Taki, a person who's won the Japanese Triple Crown of Thoroughbred horse racing. Stradivari, another Todd Fletcher horse right there with John Velasquez. Sudden breaking news. Yeah, that's it. And then finally, Trojan Nation, of course, named after the beloved USC.
Yep, named after the USC program of the same name.
Who would you pick to win?
Cherry Wine.
You really?
I just like the name, Cherry Wine.
I'm going to go with Exaggerator. I think the fact of the matter is, in the last few races, though, it has been against Nyquist. Nyquist is the one that's missing. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he suffered a white cell issue with his legs, and there was no way that Doug O'Neill was going to have the horse ride in this race at the expense of the horse's health. Mm-hmm. I think it was a smart move on their part. It was very humane decision. And this is the second time that this has happened to Doug O'Neill. Remember the last horse in 2012? I'll have another. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, had a leg injury the day before.
Yep.
Well, I'm going with Exaggerator. You got Cherry Wine. Mm-hmm. Let's make our way to the track on Saturday.
Yeah, we could probably set up camp over at the camp.
And now for baseball. Actually, how about let's go to some hockey.
The Stanley Cup Finals are, I would say, halfway through. They're going to play Game 4 within the next 20 to 25 minutes or so. The Penguins already lead the series 2-1 against the Sharks. And to be quite honest with you, I think the Sharks are a little lucky that they're still in this series because they have gotten absolutely no scoring whatsoever from either Joe Thornton or Joe Pavelski.
But
right now, the star of this series is that rookie goalie for the Penguins.
I think the stars really are the unknowns, the unknown rookies that are really the stars of this tournament. If you think about the first game, Nick Bonino, right in front of the Martin Jones, was able to get the goal. Brian Russ and Connor Sheary, especially that Connor Sheary goal was my favorite. That backhand pass from Sidney Crosby to Sheary, not the first time that it's happened during the playoffs. Game 2, this is where overtime really, for Sidney Crosby, came into play. Mm-hmm. Gets a huge pass to Chris Letang. Letang to Connor Sheary. Connor Sheary gets the wrist shot at 2:35 into overtime for the winner. Then the next game.
Game 3. The turning point of Game 3 was when the Sharks got that power play goal in that 5-minute power play with a second left. That was probably the turning point there.
It was the 4-minute high-sticking penalty on Ben Lovejoy, who is actually one of the best penalty killers for this Penguins team. In fact, the Penguins during the regular season led the league in shorthanded goals with 12. Mm-hmm. That's how good they were in terms of penalty killing. And without Ben Lovejoy there, Joel Ward, one of the few African Americans playing hockey, got the game-tying goal from the right slot. Was able to get it past Matt Murray, who's been actually much of a godsend to the Penguins at goaltender for the majority of the playoffs. Unfortunately, he allowed the game-tying goal, and then Jonas Donskoy, the Norwegian that nobody knew about, gets the game winner in overtime. Unbelievable how Chris Turner gets the puck to Donskoy behind the net. He skates out in front, beats Murray high to the stick side.
Yeah.
First time ever that the city of San Jose in the Bay Area gets to have a Stanley Cup.
That's right.
The Bay Area, honestly, is probably celebrating left and right with the playoffs.
Yeah, they are, because when you think about it, this is 25 years in the making for that entire city. They got their hockey team back in 1991. They've had their good years and their bad years, but basically they've been a bit of a tease as a postseason contender. But this year is probably the first year where they actually have a really good shot at winning the cup.
And what's crazy about it is the guy who's the goaltender, Martin Jones, all right, for the San Jose Sharks, he was the backup to Jonathan Quick when they last won the Stanley Cup for the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
He was on that team where the Kings were down 3-0 against the Sharks, and the Sharks couldn't close it out. And the Kings became the fourth team to win 4 straight and eventually, of course, beat the Rangers that year to win the Stanley Cup in 5 games. This time around, they took care of the Kings. They took care of the Dallas Stars. They took care of business against the Blues in the finals. And now, they took care of Game 3 at home. Can they do it again tonight and equalize this series and force a Game 6?
This is the swing game. This is the swing game for both teams. There's a big difference between being tied 2 games apiece and being down 3-1.
Especially going back to Pittsburgh. The last thing they want to do is go back to Pitt down 3-1, where those fans are full of their Permanente brothers sandwiches, and basically
one thing that I've learned
had
about
nothing to do with it.
Yeah, one thing that I've learned about the Penguins is that whenever they get themselves an early lead, they always seem to do a great job of holding that lead.
Or self-destructing like they did on that high sticking penalty in Game 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
whoever grabs first blood in this game is going to be in really decent shape.
Who are you going with tonight to win?
And I still like Pittsburgh, not only to win Game 4, but to win the Cup in general.
I'm actually going with San Jose to win tonight and force Game 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think really tonight they're going to learn, they're going to take whatever lessons they took from Game 3 and they're going to implement it tonight. And I think tonight Joe Pavelski is going to have a coming out party.
Yeah.
Look out, 2 goals for him. I'm going with the Sharks to win in the Shark Tank. And I have to say their entrance is the best.
Yeah.
What other team goes through a shark?
Mm-hmm. And they also make their way onto the ice to the theme music from Jaws.
Love it. Now to the NBA tournament. As you know, Golden State took care of the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, and the Cavs took care of the Raptors in 6 games.
Yeah, we had thought that the Cavaliers might have been the best team in the playoffs right now. This just goes to show you never, ever count out a champion. Because not only did Golden State come off such a hard-fought and emotional series like the one that they did against Oklahoma City, they have basically made last year's finals between those same 2 teams look like ancient history. Because right now, this series, the first 2 games to be exact, have been decided the same way that the Warriors won the Western Conference Finals against Oklahoma City, and that's with the 3-point shot. That's number 1. Number 2, even if Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are not on their A game, you can always count on Draymond Green, Andrew Bogut, Leandro Barbosa, Sean Livingston, Harrison Barnes. 5 great role players to pick up the slack for them. That was exactly what happened in Game 1.
Well, Game 1, the bench outscored Cavaliers bench 45-10.
The Cavaliers bench. This only proves 2 things if you're a Cavaliers fan. Number 1, LeBron James is just that great. He's just that great where he could carry a team by himself into a finals round. Number 2, maybe he should start suing for lack of support, because maybe with the exception of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love in Game 1, he has gotten no other scoring options on his team at all.
And what's crazy, Varejao is even with Golden State this year, and he's the first person to be on 2 teams that are in the finals. Mm-hmm. He was with Golden State. He was with Cleveland, then went to Portland.
Yep.
Then Portland let him go, and Golden State picked him up. This has been a crazy year for Anderson Varejao to get to this point. But as for LeBron James and the other two Musketeers, yes, that's really been the case because J.R. Smith has done next to nothing. Iman Shumpert, I don't even know where he is, Iman Shumpert, except if you see his
Iman
flat top.
who?
I know.
That's how much of a disappearing act he's done in the first two games of this series.
I think the first game really taught us was, the bench. It's not just the Splash Brothers. It's really the bench is the reason of Golden State, is the reason why they won 73 games. Yes, Curry is a big impact player. He won the MVP unanimously, first time ever. And Klay Thompson, when Curry was injured, was a difference maker too. But the bench, the supporting cast, has been the reason why that Golden State propelled themselves to 73 wins on the year, breaking the record, and 2 wins within their second straight championship.
One other point to prove, these first 2 games have shown that the Warriors just needed that one big run to turn the game around. In game 1, it was the final 3 minutes of the third quarter. The Warriors, I think, had a 15-2 run. And then in game 2,
and especially that 3-pointer by Iguodala that made it 74-68 going to the fourth quarter.
Then came game 2. The Cavaliers had a 6-point lead in the second quarter. And then what do the Warriors do? They go on a 30-11 run and break that game completely wide open. Do you know that the Cavaliers completely changed their game plan and it wound up backfiring against them? They had LeBron James posting up against whichever man was guarding him, and it worked well for them. Why did they suddenly decide to make him a jump shooter?
I don't know why.
Knowing full well that his jump shot has never been his greatest strength.
Oh, no, without a doubt. But in the end, it was Bogut, too. In the first 7 minutes, 15 seconds, the 4 blocks he made for the Warriors helped out. And, on top of that, the concussion, though, to Kevin Love, that had an impact, too. Losing one of the 3 Musketeers to the NBA concussion protocol right there did not help one bit.
And don't be surprised if you see him miss Game 3 in Cleveland.
And Klay Thompson in the second half, that's when he really got hot. 17 points in the second half right there, and those 5 assists. They're the first team to go 2-0 since the 2009 Lakers when they went up against the Magic that year.
In fact, I think the Warriors wrap this series up in Cleveland. I think it's going to be a 4-game sweep because right now the Warriors are playing exactly how we see them capable of playing.
And the Splash Brothers played a lot better in Game 2 than they did in Game 1. They were combined 8 for 27 in Game 1, 20 points. This time they were 13 for 24. Right there, this was a much better performance from them. And the last 2 games, Draymond Green, 44 combined points. It's really been a great thing to see from this guy, the former Michigan State Spartan. I'm actually going to go with Cleveland to win Game 3, but lose Game 4, and then Game 5 back in Oakland.
If there is a downside to the Warriors winning the title last year, is that they won it on the road. I think it's going to happen the same way this year, too, because I think the Warriors wrap this series up in Cleveland. The Warriors are just packed from their starting 5 to the bench to their coaching staff as well, whereas the Cavaliers are basically the second best player in the game right now. Yes, I said he's the second best player in the game because Stephen Curry right now is the best player in the game.
Oh, that.
He's the best impact player, and he's the best shooter.
3-pointer too. If you want,
long range and short range, and he's got the most killer crossover dribble that anyone has seen this side of Tim Hardaway.
I think he has the best step back 3-point shooting. He's the best step back 3-point shooter. The way he magically floats his feet from one edge of the 3-point line to the other, boom, gets the shot, and it's unbelievable. It's like, now you see me, now you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really the impact this guy, for a guy of his size that people doubted. You know, when they looked at him, Adam Davidson, nobody thought he was going to be this impactful of a player.
Do you know that he never even got so much as a scholarship offer coming out of high school? Davidson was the only school that believed in him, and he became a star when he led Davidson to the Elite Eight his sophomore year.
And people believed his brother more than him. And look what happened. His brother doesn't even have the Seth who?
Seth Curry? Seth Curry actually got his first big contract, his first NBA contract with the Kings. So at least he's arrived somewhat, but unfortunately, it took him 2 years in the D League to finally get that first big break.
I'll be honest though, he'll never, as you know, he'll never reach whatever his brother has. Sorry to you, Seth. I think you're.
I don't
all
even
right.
think he'll reach what his father had, and their father was a terrific shooter back in the day.
Right there. It's in the genes, too.
Yeah.
It's in the genes. But congratulations, Golden State, so far. But don't count your chickens before they hatch. You still got another 2 to win. As for the baseball right now, the Yankees this past week lost 2 out of 3 to the Blue Jays.
And they lost another player, too, because Dustin Ackley has to undergo surgery for a torn labrum. If he hasn't already, he's now out for the season.
And Mark Teixeira could be out for the season, too, possibly.
As if the Yankees did not have enough issues, not just with injuries, but with the lack of scoring runs and hitting on that roster.
They average 3.79 runs per game. They're 4-8 in their last 12 games. Their pitching is a business, and Mark Teixeira is a lousy 180 batting average hitter. You know what?
Something tells me that his injuries might have had a lot to do with the fact that he hasn't even reached the Mendoza line yet. But aside from the batting order, this weekend was probably the first weekend that we saw where the bullpen really was not able to do the job the way we know them to be capable of.
They imploded on Saturday and Sunday, especially with Mark Trumbo.
Yeah.
Who ties the major league lead with 18 home runs on the season.
Yesterday was really bad because, one, that rain delay, that 90-minute rain delay, did not do anybody any favors. And two, you could see that Aroldis Chapman really had problems locating that 100-mile-an-hour fastball of his. And Mark Trumbo wound up making him pay for it.
As for the Mets this past week, at least Matt Harvey had probably one of his best performances on Memorial Day against Jose Quintana and the White Sox, and they won 1-0 off the Neil Walker homer.
Yeah, and then came yesterday when he lost a really tough pitcher's duel with Jose Fernandez of the Marlins. But something tells me these last 2 starts may have shown that Harvey might be turning the corner because he looked really, really bad the previous 10 starts. Almost to the point where everybody was wondering exactly what was wrong with him. The Mets hope that it's not more than just a mechanical issue that was going on with him right now. But at this moment, at least the Mets,
they're only 2 games back in the NL
at
East.
least the Mets are making a go of it in the Eastern Division. And they've already played a third of the season. And the Mets' road trip continues because right now they're in Pittsburgh taking on the Pirates. And as of right now, they're in the middle of a rain delay, so it's just a matter of time before they start this thing. At least they hope they do. As for the Angels and the Yankees are playing the Angels right now at the stadium. And just as I expected, the Angels have a 2-0 lead over the Yankees in the 3rd inning. The Yankees just have major, major problems scoring runs. They look really bad.
But the Angels got some problems, too. Their pitching staff is horrible. You know, Garrett Richards, 2nd straight year, another injury issue. The fact that one of their starting pitchers has an ERA over 6. Mike Trout I feel like he's the only hitter on that team. The rest of the squad is unbearable at times to watch. As for the New York Mets, the fact of them is Steven Matz, after that terrible first start he had in the season, ran off 7 straight consecutive winning starts.
He's just been scorching hot.
He exited May with a 1.83 ERA in 34 1/3 innings of work.
And for his effort, he wound up being the Rookie of the Month in the National League.
He might be the Rookie of the Year. Granted, you got Aldemus Diaz, who's a good hitter. Trevor Story, who started the year with, remember that 7-home run barrage in the first week? And Corey Seager, who's really probably one of the best rookie hitters. You know, the National League has a really good set of rookies for this season, but I think without a doubt, Steve Matz is the front runner right now to win the Rookie of the Year. Probably the 2nd rookie to do it since Jacob deGrom.
And you mentioned that the Mets are just 2
The
games
first and
behind the Nationals for the Eastern Division lead. They're actually 1 game behind in the loss column and 3 behind in the win column. As for that Yankees-Angels series, they've got the exact same records right now, 26-30. As far as what's going on in the rest of the American League, right now, who saw the Cleveland Indians taking over the Central Division lead?
Well, who saw the Chicago White Sox going from number 1 to imploding the way that they had 8-21, and then 6-18 their last 24 games? As for the Indians themselves, they have a great run differential, a +/-46. Josh Harrison, who's hitting No, not Josh Harrison, but Jose Ramirez. 317 he's hitting for the team. 20 RBIs, 26 runs scored. And he's a dynamite utility player. And 394 runners in scoring position.
Yep. In the Eastern Division, looks like the Blue Jays are starting to make a go of it for the Eastern Division lead. But right now, it's the Orioles and the Red Sox that are going toe-to-toe for that division lead, as the Orioles lead by just 0.03 of a percentage point.
But the Red Sox, the Orioles have 80 home runs. That's 3rd most in the league.
And what about the home run barrage that Mookie Betts went on? 5 home runs in 2 games. And also, Xander Bogaerts, I think, had a 29-game hitting streak.
That unfortunately ended,
And David Ortiz, who made it loud and clear that he's going to retire at the end of this year, still looks like he can play another 2 or 3 years because he's just smoking the ball left and right.
And in the AL West right now, the Texas Rangers had before Yu Darvish made his triumphant return, they had one of the best ERAs in all of baseball. Now Yu Darvish has won his first 2 games back and has a 3.38 ERA. This is one of the great stories of the 2016 MLB season.
As far as the National League is concerned, give credit to the Mets for still hanging in there, in spite of the fact that not only Lucas Duda, but David Wright are both going to miss time because of herniated discs. Duda in his lower back and Wright in the back of his neck.
They need to make a deal. Get a Yunel Escobar. If they can make a deal for him, that would really be impactful for that batting order.
And at least the Mets were able to temporarily solidify first base for a bit because they wound up getting James Loney in a minor league deal from the Padres, but he can only do so much right now.
Saturday, he had his 100th career homer. That was the game winner against the Marlins. Actually, no, it was Friday. Sorry. It was Friday in his first home run from his 100th career to right field. And I like that stadium, by the way, still. Grant. But the Cubs are probably the greatest story this year. 141-plus run differential, most runs scored in the league, best starters ERA, best overall ERA. They have everything and then some. They could win 115 games if they keep it up.
So it looks like the Cubs right now the Cubs are basically turning the Central Division into a runaway. As for the East, the Nationals have just a slim 2-game lead on the Mets. That entire Eastern Division looks like it's going to be pretty competitive because right now, it's the Nationals, Mets, Marlins, and Phillies in that order, and the Braves are basically the worst team in baseball right now.
Oh, well, they're terrible. And actually, this coming week is the amateur draft.
This coming Thursday is going to be the amateur draft.
And you have the Phillies, who had the worst record, get the number 1 pick, and there's this guy, Will Puck. He's probably the number 1 prospect that will be selected. As for the Dodgers, Clayton Kershaw, guys, he's going to win the Cy Young. 109 strikes to 6 walks.
He may win the Cy Young Award, but right now, the Giants are the best team in the West. Pretty coincidental that this is happening in an even-numbered year.
But let's see how they're going to deal without Hunter Pence being out for some time. That could be a big blow to them.
Well, before we go, we just want to give a special word of thanks to Kenny Graham, who's on the other side of the glass. As always, double-dipping, going back and forth between here and seeing what's going on in the big studio. Thanks again, Kenny. Eric, as always, thank you once again.
And United States, please win the Copa America games tomorrow and Saturday.
For everyone here, I am Jamie.
And I'm Eric.
Enjoy the rest of the games, folks. Good night.
We'll see you next week.